So for the folks who aren't on, we have a YouTube channel that we do post recordings, so you can always go back. So happy Friday, everybody. My name's Joe Graziano. I am one of the Philly VMUG leaders. Wanted to get you together today just to go over some new and exciting things that are coming to the Philadelphia and the VMUG group, as well as some VMware features. And we have a guest speaker on today, Karsten, who anybody in the local area knows Karsten well. He's going to be taking my VCF information one step further with the VCF Holodeck, which is a really great testing environment that you can use. So, like I said, we're doing some updates here. First thing I want to talk about is the UserCon. So I don't know how many of you have been to UserCons in the past. I've been to many. This will be my first as a leader. So what to expect? It's going to be on Tuesday next week, the 25th. Chris McCain from Broadcom is going to be coming out to give the keynote speech. But on top of that, there are a lot of great things happening. You have a chance to network with your peers, come talk with me. Karsten should be there. A lot of folks, I think we have over 200 people registered. So it's going to be a great event. It always is. You can take some hands-on labs. There's going to be a lot of interesting sessions. I'm going to show you a slide in just a minute. And there's swag. So there's a really neat new sticker that one of our members created for the I Love Philadelphia VMUG. Probably one of the biggest prizes is going to be the VMUG Advantage. So it's a 1-year subscription to the VMUG Advantage program, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. A MetaQuest headset. And if you're a Lego aficionado like me, we're bringing along the Love Statue. Sweet. This is an eye chart. I don't want you to have to read through it. Feel free to take a screenshot, but this is what the agenda is going to look like on Tuesday. And I circled a few things, and the reason I did is because VCF is one of the standout sessions or groups of sessions that we're going to be having, which is probably one of the biggest things that's new and exciting. It's been around for a little while, but it's really a breakout star for the VMware portfolio. And then you see in green, there's going to be 2 different hands-on lab sessions, one about firewalls and another about disaster recovery. So they should be really, really fun to take part in. Real quick through the screen, Valley Cyber, Intel, Pure Storage, Zorus, as well as VMware. They'll be our sponsors. They'll be there in their booths. So come say hi and show them some love. So that's the VMUG conference next week on the 25th. If you haven't registered, I highly suggest you do. Broader than our local conference, VMUG is now doing a nationwide conference called Connect. This is going to be in late April, the 23rd and 25th in St. Louis. There is a fee for this one, unlike the local user cons. But again, it's a bigger way for the VMUG community and everyone to get together to, learn more about the technology, take more hands-on labs, interface with your friends and partners and colleagues. So a little bit of a breakdown for this. The welcome reception is on the 23rd. Keynote, hands-on labs. I'm really looking forward to hearing Pablo's speak. I read a little bit about him, and he's just a very a very charismatic person. And then again, hands-on labs, a lot of good things across a 2-day event. So if you have the ability, I highly recommend you sign up for this. I know it's a little bit last minute based on this meeting, but there's still plenty of time, I think. And then VMUG Advantage. This has changed. It's gotten bigger. You have VCF license access, which I'm going to talk about in the next slide. A lot of really good opportunities for learning. New Horizons is a training company that's going to be part of the program, and discounts to VMware Explore. And then, like I said, with VCF, so VMUG and VMware have made a little bit of a change. In the past, having VMUG Advantage got you access to all of the VMware software and licensing. Moving forward, you do need, if you want the VCF license, you do need to certify the VCP VCF exam, as well as if you just want the VVS license, it's the VCP VVF exam. Now, one thing that has changed, and Karsten, keep me honest here, you don't need to go through the training any longer to take this exam. So if you are already using this technology and you do feel comfortable, you can pay your fee. And in this case, if you have VMUG Advantage, it's $125 for the voucher, which is a discount, and you can just take the test. And then once you've passed, you'll have access to the licensing.
That's correct.
Okay. And feel free to take a screenshot. Again, it'll be in the recording. Use code community for 10% off. And then the biggie, VMware Explore. They announced it. It's going to be August 25th through the 28th in Las Vegas. I did hear, Karsten, I don't know if you have heard more, but they are talking about some Europe events. I don't think they've fully announced that there's going to be a VMware Explore Europe, but I hear some news is coming.
Yeah, from my understanding, the plan is instead of having the one big event in Europe in Barcelona, they're going to have more smaller events in each country in Europe.
Okay.
Probably maybe like the event in St. Louis coming up, or maybe just one day events, depending on.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So this link right here will get you all of the information. If you want to come to the Las Vegas event, you're all set to go. But keep refreshing this page occasionally, and there will be some more information coming on the European tour. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up. The community forum, if you don't know about this already, I highly recommend you go to this page, you set up yourself an account, and you get involved. There are a lot of all of your peers, including myself, Karsten, folks at the companies. We are actively participating in these communities. This is where you can just ad hoc ask whatever questions on your mind, and you're going to get some great interaction with everybody else. It's literally just it's the communities forum. It used to be part of VMware. It has continued to be part of Broadcom and VMware. It's a great place to really engage. And I can't say enough about getting questions answered. So check it out. It's a really good place to start. Okay, so that's enough about VMUG. Before I move on to VMware and the VCF, does anybody have any questions? I didn't want this to be a full presentation per se. I should have said in the beginning, feel free to interrupt me. But does anybody have any questions on any of the things that I've talked about so far? Okay, I'll take silence for consent for now. So let's talk about VCF. It is VMware's integrated software platform for hybrid and cloud environments. If you're looking for modern infrastructure to accelerate your cloud adoption or unify your existing cloud experience, VCF offers just a compelling foundation for your digital transformation journey. From a modern infrastructure, like I said, unified cloud experience, and highly secure and resilient platform. What makes it powerful is it provides a software-defined data center stack with integrated compute, storage, networking, and cloud management capabilities. It has portable licensing, automated provisioning. I mean, speak up or raise your hand. Who's doing a lot of automation today or wants to get into the automation side of your infrastructure and of your solutions? I know that's been a big one for me with my customers. Because let's face it, if you can automate things and you can make things, you take a lot of work off of your plate to be more agile. It's definitely between the automated provisioning and Kubernetes, and it leads to the other item on the slide. It's highly scalable. And it unifies VMware's core components, vSphere, vSAN, and NSX. All of these enterprise-grade tools into a single consistent architecture that you can deploy across your on-prem or your cloud environments. Actually, let me go back. So, Karsten, I'm just going to call on you real quick. So 5.2 is the latest and greatest edition of VCF currently, correct?
5.2.1, yeah.
5.2.1, okay. And the reason I wanted to call that out is because back at Explore last year, they announced that VCF, VMware Cloud Foundation 9 would be coming, and it's going to have significant improvements to the cloud operating model, streamlined license management, and expanded multi-cloud operations. And I did find out, I didn't get a chance to put it in this slide. As of today, the expected release date, I believe they said, is April 24th of this year. Is that still something you're hearing too, Karsten?
Want to get me in trouble?
No, I don't. Never mind. I don't want to get you in trouble. That was the latest and greatest that I saw.
Subject to change, and without the disclaimer, I probably would expect it in that time frame. It might be May. It might be, yeah.
Yeah, I will happily scrub that from the recording.
No, I think the announcement is going to come out then, but I wouldn't expect the download bits
there
right then and there. Beta is currently going on, so we have customers actively testing it. It's not complete slideware, obviously, but based on some of the feedback from the beta and some of the enhancements we can bring into it, the actual release date might be a little bit later.
And that makes sense. I mean, like I said, the most recent news I saw was April 25th, but I think everyone knows well that subject to change based on performance, there may be some things that come out in the beta that require a little bit more attention. I doubt it, but I'm hearing good things and looking forward to seeing, this newest release.
Yeah, just in general, Broadcom is definitely very interested in having a stable working release over meeting any deadlines or release dates.
Absolutely. Totally agree. Okay. So
before Dustin on camera, I'm wondering if he has a question or.
No, don't have a question. Just here to be present.
Okay,
that's all.
Appreciate that.
Yep, we appreciate you. So before I hand things over to Karsten, does anybody have any comments, questions, things they want to talk about before we dive into the holodeck?
It looks like James has a question in the chat regarding K8s.
Is the K8s reference related to Tanzu?
And it's a no.
Okay.
Not just, right? So you're absolutely right. There is a Tanzu product portfolio. Actually, some of that will roll over into VCF, but since vSphere 8, we actually have the, it's now rebranded into VKS, VMware Kubernetes services that are running natively in the hypervisor, allowing you to offer those services with upstream Kubernetes to your developers. If they want to run containers in parallel to VMs, you can do that on the same host. You can carve out resources for them so that they're not overusing your CPU, memory, and storage. But you can literally carve out like a resource pool, make it available to developers to consume for Kubernetes deployments and container deployments. And it's included in the license, so there's no additional license needed for that. On top of that, there are additional services available with Tanzu, obviously, but if you're looking for something like a Docker, Rancher, or something to just, or OpenShift container hosting platform, it's right there for you. And it's fairly simple to activate and fairly easy to manage for the VI admin. And the actual developers or the consumers of that can use whatever they want. They can use command line APIs, whatever makes them happy.
Awesome. Thanks, Karsten. So last question for now, before I turn it over. Show of hands, if you can click on the little emoji down there, who's planning on coming to UserCon next week? And the reason I ask, especially to you, James, is these are the types of conversations that are going to be great to have in person. We can do some follow up and really engage and help you with with whatever you need happen. Okay, well, it's Friday. It's a quiet crowd. All right, Karsten, I'm going to, I see Karsten's nice. And Tom, awesome. Okay, I'm going to stop my share and turn it over to Karsten to talk about the holodeck.
Awesome, thanks, Joe. And just as Joe mentioned, right, this is a small enough group, so let's make this interactive, ask the questions. I might know the answer, I might not be able to answer because I'm not allowed to, or maybe I need to follow up, but I'm more than happy to take the question and then we can go from there. So who's familiar with Holodeck? Anyone have seen this before or heard about it before, or?
It's new to me. I haven't heard of it.
Anyone who watched Star Trek?
Totally.
Yes.
So this is Holodeck is a reference basically to Star Trek having the ability to have a virtual lab environment. It's not going to be like Holodeck on the Enterprise, but it's at least a way to virtually host nested hosts, basically to build your lab on a single host. In a nutshell, this is really what it is. A way for customers, and this is a very wordy slide, apologize for that. This one actually tells it better, right? So it's a self-contained VCF environment that can run on a single physical host, as long as that host meets certain criteria for CPU cores, memory, and storage. And I think I have those on the slide somewhere. It's not there in the documentation. And it really allows you to experience what you can do with VCF. It's not meant for any kind of performance testing where you test out how vSAN works, because obviously if it's nested, that there's a reason why VMware doesn't allow people to run nested environments in production. There's some inherent challenges that come with that, and things you have to be aware of. But this is using the lab builder code basically to create a self-contained environment with all the networking plumbing between those hosts already done, with a jump host that you can connect to via a remote desktop. I'm going to show this. Actually, I'm going to jump to my lab environment. I think we should have time today to do that. The key really is you only need one single physical host. If you're familiar with William Lamb and his website for home labs, there's some beefy home workstations that should have enough power to run this, especially now with 803 and NVMe tiering for memory. You can actually build some really cool home lab environments. That being said, we also have a lot of customers using this for testing of new versions of VCF before they roll it out into production, or testing specific aspects of VCF, like password rotation, certificate rotation, and some other of the functionality like patching, updating environments before they roll it out in their test and production environments. How do you get started here, right? So there is, and I have those links at the end of the presentation where you can find the documentation and the form to request access to Holodeck Kit. It is not an official Broadcom VMware product. It is more along those lines like a fling, where it is put out by some of our developers and coders. You get community support, but it's not a product that you can call into Broadcom support and open tickets for. That right there as a statement, because it is a nested environment. Any questions so far?
Yeah, I got a quick question on Holodeck. I mean, the value, can you just kind of go into the value that customers can realize with, toiling around with Holodeck?
Yeah, it's basically, I'm a big hands-on guy, right? So hands-on labs are great. If you don't have any environment at all, you can always go to the labs.hol.vmware.com and open up your environment there for a couple hours. But it's not something that persists. If you want to have a persistent lab environment for you at home, I know there's plenty of, Joe mentioned VMUG Advantage earlier. I know a lot of VMUG Advantage members that use their licenses and to build their home labs, whether you run just vSphere on there or if you want to look at VCF. This is one way with a lower threshold of resources needed to get started with VCF. Because if you want to test VCF in a normal environment, the minimum requirement for VCF is 3 physical hosts, and then you only have the management domain. You don't have any workload domains. In the Holodeck environment, I'm running pretty much 10 hosts or more if I do the dual deployment for 2 sites on a single physical host. So you reduce the amount of hardware drastically that you need for testing out certain scenarios.
Right on. Yeah, that's crystal clear. So, I mean, I guess the whole purpose of this, and again, it's not supported by Broadcom, like you were saying, but this is really just to encourage more adoption of VCF. So people get
adoption and learning about it, right? So I mean, you need to know what you're doing before you can adopt it. Absolutely. And then even once you have adopted it, as I said, customers, obviously VCF is out there for, well, I started selling it when it was 1.8. It was called Evo SDDC. Now we're at 5.2, and obviously the next version is around the corner. So the idea is also to get familiar with the next version and testing those updates, right? VCF does a great job of allowing you to push of a button, upgrade your environment from one release to the next. Simplifying it a little bit, there is a ton of pre-checks that go into this, and it tells you exactly if there's a pre-check in there with, I think, over 200 tests checking if your vSAN firmware drivers are up to date and compatible with the next version. If you have any settings that would break the automated update, it tells you all of that, and you can remediate that before you push the button or schedule the update for a maintenance window if you want to. And this allows you to test all of that. So you have all those runbooks and your documentation. You can build that on the Holodeck environment rather than building up a very costly real environment with all those hosts, and especially vSAN, right? So not all customers have vSAN ready nodes at hand. With the nested environment here, we can actually simulate vSAN in that nested environment without having to have vSAN ready nodes for that physical host. But
yeah,
to be fair, that single host still needs to be a little bit beefy, right? So you need 20 cores at minimum, 512 gig memory, and 2.5 terabyte disk. Now I have to say I went on Amazon and got 4 terabyte NVMe for $250. So if you want to build your own lab, it's not that expensive. But good question. Just real quick regarding the bill of materials, this is the 5.2. 5.2.1 obviously includes the 8.0U3 updates for patches that have been released. So there's some minor updates in there compared to the 5.2 bomb. But it's a great, if you want to start with VCF Holodeck, I would actually recommend doing 5.2 and then run through the upgrade to 5.2.1 just to have a version where you can actually test some of that in your lab. Another wordy slide, but Holodeck console is a VM that you create as part of the Holodeck with the Holodeck Toolkit to have that jump box from where you deploy the Holodeck components in your environment. And it's basically currently a Windows Server 2019 with desktop experience enabled virtual machine where you have certain tools installed. You have to download the VMware tools, so Power CLI, Power VCF. You want to have the VMware OVF tool. There's a bunch of things, and the documentation walks you through this that need to be on that ISO file. It's going to be a big ISO file. I learned that the hard way. It's 50 gig plus minus. So if you have a slow network somewhere and have to download this or have to move it somewhere, in my case, my lab server is in the garage, and I'm using one of those because I didn't have a network cable down there. I am using one of those power adapters. What's it called? TCP over your power line, basically, which works great, but I had to upgrade it to the 300 meg per second to have any decent configuration. Or otherwise, it took literally a day to download that image from my laptop down to the garage. So that's me in my lab setup. Of course, my wife wouldn't want to have that big box here in the house. On the physical host, those are the minimum required layer 1 machines. So those are basically the nested hosts that we put on that physical host. It starts with 4 hosts for the management cluster. You can add additional hosts if you want to play with creating workload domains. If you're not familiar with workload domains, join us for one of those sessions on VCF and the way it works. Way to look at it is basically a workload domain is a cluster of resources where you have hosts, and then within that workload domain, you can have multiple vCenters and clusters in there, but it's another management layer. It does come with the console that I mentioned. That's the machine you interact with the environment. There is a router, which is a small Linux VM that allows you to build that networking between the hosts and also allows you to communicate from outside of the environment into. So I'm connecting basically to my router on a specific IP address and port, and it automatically redirects me for RDP on my console. And then there's the Cloud Builder appliance that will be deployed. That is the one in 5.2 that deploys the actual VCF components, SDVC manager, and the images for those hosts on those virtual ESXi hosts. Make sense so far? All right. I don't want to go too deep into all of this, but as I mentioned, the secret sauce of, and Joe, can you keep an eye on the chat if there's questions coming up?
Yep, I'm keeping an eye on it.
Okay, cool. It does all the configuration for you, right? For you, well, I should say there's 2 steps on the host. You have to create port groups, one for your site A, and then if you do a multi-site deployment for site B, that would be a VLC B PG. But then everything else is automatically mapped as you deploy it. It's very prescriptive. You shouldn't change any of those IP addresses because that's the whole idea of Holodeck being that self-contained environment that works like like a clone, basically. You can have several of those on the same host. You can, if you want to troubleshoot or if you reach out to the community for help, everyone has the same setup in the same environment, which makes that troubleshooting a little bit easier.
Karsten, from a networking perspective, is NSX part of the holodeck, or is
NSX is part of VCF and is part of the holodeck? Yes.
Okay. So if you wanted to play with NSX and the managers and that type of thing,
yeah, if you're familiar with NSX or with any of the components included in VCF, holodeck has all of them.
Cool. Okay.
Right. So this is to your question, right? So this is an older slide. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend using 7, but it works. if you want to, even with running ESXi 8 virtual nested hosts on it, can be done. My recommendation obviously would be running ESXi 8 these days. But this is simplified diagram of how this works with the Cloud Builder VM, the Holo console, and the Holo router being connected here, and then the nested hosts connecting to that Holo 8 port group to communicate. But the router basically is the one that you interact with if you come from the outside, from my laptop connecting to that environment and such. It does have all typical best practice for deploying VCF with your vSAN networking setup for transportation network for NSX. All of those components are self-contained in that image. All right. Not too deep into it. So I can make that presentation available if anyone wants to look at all those details. They are also obviously in the documentation. Not sure if we get much out of going into those details today. But here's a sample note from a customer using this. They had a spare Dell VxRail around. Doesn't have to be VxRail, obviously. It can be just a Power Edge node or something similar. And this is the actual usage of it. Any questions so far? Because then I would just jump into my environment to give you a little bit of a look how it looks like.
So real quick before you jump, Karsten, so I was talking about with VMUG Advantage, you get the VCF license keys. Is this so do you still need one of those? Yep, there you go. So 60 days of testing without needing to apply a license. So basically you can build and tear down and have 60 days.
So it's almost like I knew this question would be coming. How do you license for this? The recommended way is to do the 60-day free license, right? So you can deploy VCF with a license later option, and Holodeck takes advantage of this, allowing you to spin up the environment. And basically after 60 days, likely there's a new version or updates available anyway, so you can just redeploy it.
Makes sense.
It's not meant to be an environment that runs for longer than 60 days. Really.
Sure. Gianni, did you have a question?
Yes. So this is VCF 5.2, right? So once we go to the VCF 9, you have to buy separate license, or is it
VCF 9 will require so TBD, right? So I assume that we will continue having a license later option for VCF 9 too. But also just as a heads up, you will probably get an email next week because there is going to be changes in the way you download products and license keys to make it more hard on people, on software pirates, basically. So there will be individual downloads in the future based on your site ID. So as long as you're a customer and you have access to the Broadcom support portal and you can download, there shouldn't be much impact to you. There might be impact to some of our users who use automated ways. So some of the larger customers, obviously for patching and stuff, they automated the download of updates to vSphere, to VCF, and then all of that into shares in their environment. So they will have to make some changes to those scripts. But there will be some changes. And yes, 9 needs different licenses than 5. But if you have that option to test, which I assume, I'm happy to verify with product management that this will still be the case, then the deferred way of licensing is preferred for Holodeck. Just install it without license keys.
Will the Holodeck will work for the VCF 9?
So we are currently developing the next generation of Holodeck. There will be a Holodeck version 4.9. You're welcome to try once 9 is out to see if you can upgrade 5.2 to 9. That would be a good test. but since 9 is going to be a lot different than 5, I would stay tuned here for information. We will definitely have announcements around this once 9 is GA and once the next version of Holodeck is there.
Okay, thanks, Chris.
So if you guys want to see how my environment looks like, let me bring up. You guys see that screen? And I apologize for looking to the side now, but that's on a different screen for me.
Yep, looks good.
So this is my ESX host here. I have a couple extra machines deployed here. I was playing with the Skyline Health Diagnostic appliance, and I have a couple extra. You see, I have the core 4 hosts, but I also deployed 3 additional hosts to build workload domains. So there's a bunch of additional hosts running on my physical hosts. Currently, I do have the console here for 5.2. And I have the router, and I have different versions because I was playing with this, so don't get distracted by this. But that's basically the core environment here. And if I'm looking at my host, it's not taking too much of a toll on it right now. So there's extra capacity here for, I actually added some memory with the memory tiering too. It's a cool feature in 8.0. If you haven't looked at it, you can basically use an NVMe RAM to extend your memory. And ESXi will offload some of the slow and not so much used memory into the NVMe to give you extra capacity here, which is a very cool feature because in a lot of companies, RAM is one of the bottlenecks for memory, not so much the CPUs. On that host, from that jump host, there is, just to give you an idea of all the components, there is a nice website that gets deployed with all the usernames, passwords, and the IP addresses. So you have your cloud builder, your SDDC manager, you have all the different vCenters that get deployed as part of this. And you can jump to your SDDC manager here. I haven't installed the certificates yet, so there's one of the labs you can do in your own lab environment would be to actually deploy certificates. There is a certificate authority as part of the Holodeck. Then you basically can log into, after it is deployed, you can log into the SDDC manager. You can see your workload domains, how the utilization is. You can, if Holodeck, the current version, we're working on adding functionality for the private AI. So if you're interested in private AI and testing that with Holodeck, that's coming. You might need a GPU in your test server here to take full advantage of this because it's not that easy to virtualize and have a nested GPU, obviously, but there's ways that we are working on so you can test this. I can see my hosts basically in that environment. I have the 4 core hosts assigned to my management cluster, and you see there's 3 that are currently unassigned. Those are the 10, 11, 12. I can create now in this environment, I can commission those hosts. I can create workload domains. I can do everything I could do in a regular environment, right? So and I also have, if I look at the vCenter, vCenter view of that environment where I can also see those hosts and how they are in that initial management cluster. All right, so you see there's NSX manager is deployed, the SEC manager. Those are basically virtual machines running in that nested environment, in that nested cluster on that environment. Any questions so far? All right, how difficult is it to deploy would be one question. So there's two ways to deploy Holodeck. You can use the GUI. That looks a little bit like 80s computer hacking and graphics back then, using PowerShell. There should be a window popping up here. It's not the fanciest looking of UIs, but it gets the job done. You basically just select the JSON file that comes with Holodeck. You can fill this all out, select your options for your host and all that stuff. So I can try to pretend to do this. So this is the no license Holo for site 2, because I have site 1 already deployed. It automatically takes some of the configuration data out of the JSON file, fills it in. I have to point to the file for the cloud builder. So that's one of the components you have to download. Somewhere. So in my case, I can deploy 5.2, 5.2.1, let's say 5.2.1. This is where the ESXi, which image you want to use, the 803B for 5.2.1. And naming prefix, so let's do this. VMUG. It has to be a more complex password in 5.2 than in previous versions. So we need, I think, more than 12 here. And that's pretty much it. I need to connect to my host.
Nice.
So it's connected. It gives me actually the so the recommendation is to have it on a single host. There is a way that you can also deploy it on if you have vCenter in the mix. I would not recommend that because it makes things a little bit more complicated, but there is ways around it. And in that case, you would have to choose a cluster and all that stuff. So for me, this time, because I'm deploying in the second site, I would use this, and then you just pick the data store on the on your host that you want to deploy it, and deploy the edges. And then you can click validate, and it says you need an IP for this.
Yes. Launch.
And then I can say construct, and it would actually start deploying.
That's pretty cool.
It's straightforward. It's not obviously this is all in documentation, right? So I have the link in the spreadsheet. Let me close one of here. This, by the way, the UI also allows you to do the automated deploy. It also allows you to extend. So if you have a Holodeck already deployed, and then you say, hey, I want to add 3 hosts to it later, you can do that by using the extension pack, and there's JSON files for that available as well. Could be a way to break this. Okay, and go out of this real quick. Sorry. We've done a better job of like Martha Stewart. I have something prepared here.
Live demos.
Yeah, so my preferred way after doing this for a couple times now is actually to go use the scripts. And then you basically can do everything that we did in the UI. You can set up in your INI files here for so something you guys can read. Of course, I'm struggling on my monitor right now to read it, but it actually has all the IP addresses in there. It has the settings you want to do for Holodeck, the NTP server, the configuration file you want to use, whether you want to do OSA or ESA for vSAN in the simulation. So you have those options as well. You can set that all in the INI file. And then if you want to redeploy, you can just go in here and say, okay, go ahead and start. And this, in my environment, takes about 3 hours, where I don't have to touch the keyboard after this enter command at all. And the only thing, well, it takes a while to see something happening, but you can actually see in my physical host. You should see that it's starting to import Cloud Builder for that environment. And then after that, you will see very quickly the hosts popping up for that environment.
Yeah, that's handy. INI files are super handy because then you get that information in there successfully once, and then you can just reuse it and repeat it.
And you see basically, I didn't use the VMUG thing in the for the prefix in my INI file. It's the B, so it's bring up the second side with the prefix B
yeah.
in there. This is the Cloud Builder that's currently deployed here. And then we can take a quick look at the other slides I had. There wasn't much.
So Karsten, Tom had an interesting question, and I think I do too. So prior to running that for the holodeck, you do need the host to have ESX installed and configured.
Correct.
Yeah. So Tom, yeah, you would have an instance of ESX, be able to log into it, because then you're going to call that host out when you set up the cloud builder. I guess it would the holodeck building process.
Go back to my PowerPoint. I think I had it somewhere on this slide. So it needs to be already an ESXi host that is deployed. There is some configuration things for the port groups that you need to do on that ESXi host. It's all in documentation, and I do have the documentation right here. So
yeah, I posted William Lamb's 2 links in the chat as well, because that's he's got some great information, and then I believe he points over here to your links, and then there you've got his blog. So Tom says, okay, so yeah, so you can run with the eval key.
yeah, I mean, obviously there's also for vSphere is the 60-day on the physical host. The better option, as Joe pointed out earlier, if you want to get actual license keys that you can use for the physical host as well as for Holodeck, is joining the VMUG program, Advantage program, and passing the VCP exam.
Because those become 3-year keys, right, Karsten?
They become.
Red cars are cars that are red in color. Cars can be red.
I know why Alexa is going into a dissertation.
She's going to answer it for you.
Alexa, stop.
Red cars are also an artistic expression.
Sorry for that. Interesting. Most common car color in the US is silver and not red. Who would have known? So I have to reread it. I think you get it for 3 years or for 1 year, and then there is an upgrade course or something after.
Oh, okay.
Which is, that one is free, I believe.
But at minimum, you should see a 1-year key versus the 60-day once you've been part of VMUG Advantage. So
yeah, it's again, it's not as easy as it used to be. I'm the first to admit that, but it's motivating to get the certification, and clearly Broadcom is of that mindset. If you give our users something, you want something in return, and that's that commitment to become certified.
Yeah.
You already pointed out Explore, so I don't really have to, but the call for paper for Explore is also open now. So if you are interested in presenting yourself, you can do that. You can go on the website. It's call for papers or for proposals, and come up with a story, come up with what you're doing for. So, but that's it from me. If you have any questions, we have a couple minutes, or I can go back to that environment and see if the hosts started deploying.
no, that was awesome. Thanks, Karsten. So yeah, in the few minutes we have left, does anybody have any questions with what you saw today?
I personally don't have any questions, but Karsten and Joe, thank you guys for hosting us here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I see you on Tuesday. Thanks.
Let's deploy. Yeah, I'm gonna be there on Tuesday. I'm gonna do one of the hands-on labs. I think the VLR is assigned to me. So if you do the formerly site recovery, now VLR and VCDR lab on Tuesday, we will definitely see each other. Well, until then, have a great weekend and stay warm. Got cold here in Philly.
Yeah, it is chilly. All right, everyone. So have a great weekend, and I look forward to seeing everyone next week and possibly on the next call. Have a great one.
Thanks.